In this video, we're going to be discussing Delphi studies. Delphi studies seek to identify a consensus among a group of experts regarding a particular topic through several rounds of questioning. Defining a Delphi study. Linstone and Turoff suggest that the method and objective of a Delphi study may be characterized as a method for structuring a group communication process, so that the process is effective in allowing a group of individuals as a whole to deal with complex problems. Well, Sproul goes a little bit further in proposing that the Delphi technique of futures research is an attempt to use the science, rather than the art, of prophecy by gathering a consensus of expert opinions using several rounds of questionnaires or interviews and providing controlled feedback of results between rounds as a means of forecasting future trends. So we can unpack these definitions a little bit further. Firstly, Delphi studies work to identify a consensus position amongst the participants within the research. It was developed as a systematic interactive forecasting method which relies on a panel of experts. And it's commonly interested in predicting the future. And it's conducive to independent thought on the part of experts and to aid them in the gradual formation of a considered opinion. And as the last definition we looked at highlighted, it can be based on either interviews, questionnaires, or potentially a mix of these methods. So it's left quite wide open as to how the process can be constructed itself. So what is Delphi? And similar to some of the other research designs discussed in this mini-series of videos, it can actually be challenging to define and locate. This is because Delphi is sometimes called a method, a technique, or a design. Williamson suggests that Delphi provides a design for undertaking research, which is underpinned by theoretical explanation, which makes it more than just a data collection mechanism. This is an argument that I'm comfortable with, and as we've covered several concepts which are described differently in the literature in this series of research design videos, I have included it here. But it's important to be aware that it is described differently within the literature in terms of method, technique, or design. And importantly, it can guide and inform all of these things. It offers guidance in terms of the methods to be used and the techniques to be used for data collection, which arguably impacts the whole design of the study, including the sample which you should select. When it comes to the classification of Delphi studies have been described as employing qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods approaches. The anonymous collection of narrative group opinion, coupled with the tightly structured nature of the process and quantitatively described results, renders the approach difficult to situate in a methodological category. Although it has been suggested that modifications can be made to make Delphi studies to be more or less quantitative or qualitative. There are several characteristics of Delphi studies. Firstly, they bring together a panel of experts as the research participants. They involve multiple rounds of structured questioning, dropping potential answers as the rounds move forward. It has been argued that the path between the first round and the final round of questioning are somewhat flexible, so Delphi studies can sit somewhere on the qualitative-quantitative continuum, depending on how the questioning within the different rounds are structured. Importantly, Delphi studies should provide anonymity within the expert participation panel, and it's commonly suggested that the panel size of experts should not exceed 30. Like any research design, there are strengths and weaknesses. When it comes to some of the strengths of Delphi, this includes the flexibility but structured approach offered to gathering the views of experts on a particular topic. Delphi allows participants to reflect and reconsider their views in light of the contribution of others during each round of questioning. Delphi studies also offer anonymity among the expert participant panel, which can promote honesty and reduces the risk of the so-called halo effect. Delphi studies also allow research and structured discussion of the future, which can be challenging due to the inherently hypothetical nature of what's going to happen in the future. However, Delphi studies have inherent weaknesses, and some of these weaknesses can become challenges. So, for example, utilising multiple rounds of questioning can be time-consuming and can lead to high dropout rates, which can compromise the validity of the research. Although we have mentioned the ability for participants to reflect and change their view as a strength a minute ago, this can be a double-edged sword, as it can allow participants to alter their response to mirror the majority view, creating a bandwagon or herd effect, potentially leading to bias. Now, of course, having an expert panel as our participants can be great, but ultimately this relies on expert opinion, and the research is only as good as the views which that expert panel has. So it's important to carefully select the expert panel, because that sample will determine the credibility and strength of the research. Plus, criticism exists around what is meant by consensus within Delphi studies, as ultimately an element of interpretation is required. And it could be potentially argued that research designs such as Q methodology employ more objective methods to analyse views and not force consensus. When it comes to locating Delphi studies on the philosophical spectrum, the potential to structure Delphi studies to be more quantitative or qualitative allows scope for different philosophical alignment. I personally would argue that Delphi studies could align neatly with realism, acknowledging the desire for some objectivity whilst recognising that not everything can be elicited and understood objectively. Although some scholars suggest that Delphi studies can be structured to take advantage of the strengths which interpretivism or positivism provide. So to conclude, Delphi studies seek consensus from a panel of experts. They are commonly focused on forecasting and predicting the future. Delphi studies should try and prevent participants from simply resorting to agreeing with the majority view. It is useful to predefine what is meant by consensus and how it will be established within a Delphi study. And finally, how the method of data collection is structured within the rounds of data collection will likely influence the underpinning research philosophy.